Buongiorno, signor Ministro, signori
Good
Ministri.
morning, Mr. Minister, ministers, authorities, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mr. Massolo, President of ISPI, and I'm honored of being here to invite you to this 7th edition of Med Dialogues. This edition was a bold one because it is held in this hybrid format. On the one hand, we have a region that is living a transition, not only because of the pandemic, but also for a set of factors that I will list to you shortly. And these factors actually slow down the different organizations. But we have believed that this conference could have been done, so we did it. This is a region in transition, but this doesn't mean that our ambitions are less strong. We have been committed for the last year, and the Met dialogues that are usually taken and held at the very beginning of December is also composed by a set of initiatives that are held in other countries and regions. There are four important elements that we recognize: shared security, shared prosperity, management of flows, both of people and goods and services, all the things that actually pass through the region, sharing cultures and human experiences. And I have to say that this is particularly fundamental today, that we are called upon being collectively ready to a challenge, ready to manage multi-transitions that affect the world and the region. And I'm talking about the Mediterranean region in a broader sense, a region that is touched by the pandemic, that creates inequalities throughout the world and throughout the regions, that create difficulties in accessing vaccines, growth, which is also a transition, because on the one hand, we've got good estimates, but on the other, we have to see the slowing down factors connected to the culture, connected to the imperfect infrastructures. And the fact that we have a difficult access for women and youth to the labor market, climate change, which requires adaptation to the world and in particular to this region. So the risk that we are facing is that we have an asymmetrical geometry that we have to follow. And today we will talk about this, which is another challenge that we need to tackle. There is a great potential that we can exploit, mostly in terms of renewables. And on the one hand, we have clear inequalities in this field, but on the other, in case the energetic transition is complicated in the northern Mediterranean Sea, it is also complicated in the south of this region, which are still using fossil fuels. And then there is geopolicy and geopolitics in general, which is affected by the role of the United States, as Europe could not find its place right now. We are moving towards an inter-regional dialect. And this narrative actually affects local discussions and debates that interest the country that is now hosting us. Old enemies and new allies. This is part of our ambition, both the ambition of the Institute of INSPI, but which is also shared and boosted by the government, we don't aim to offer solution. We aim at making possible a meeting between civil society, politics, businesses, and the single stakeholders that might actually have a word and have a say on the balances of the Mediterranean Sea. We don't want to offer solutions, as I just said. We want to indicate a methodology that is right to focus on the problems and the issues and support the governments in summarizing and making the best decisions. So the idea of involving everyone is fundamental in order to remember that under the spirit of collectivity, MED can trace a positive agenda for the Mediterranean Sea. And this is true for now. Within the scope of this framework made of shadows and lights that we will like to change. We don't want a threatening Mediterranean Sea. We want a peaceful Mediterranean Sea. And this is why these kind of conferences, including others, are useful for now. We have the Prime Minister connected with us, President Massolo, honorable members, honorable attendees, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here for the 7th edition of Met Dialogues. I would like to thank Minister Di Maio, ISPI, and Farnesina for the invitation and for the organization of this event. This is an occasion to strengthen the regional cooperation, which is fundamental for our country. Mediterranean Sea is not just a sea or a geographical expression. Today, as in the past, it is a set of intertwined links, both social, cultural, and political. Thanks to the artists and thanks to the sailors, we have shared knowledges and we have shared know-how that have lived also after the political divisions. This is a crossroads, the Mediterranean Sea. If you think about what happened last March when the container ship actually obstructed the Suez Channel by increasing the oil prices all over the world. The closing of the Mediterranean Sea actually had consequences worldwide. Or let's think about migrants that actually land on our coasts and start from further countries. We're not able to control the migratory flows, which this year account for 6 times more the last year. Today, Italy is still promoting a European advancement towards a collective management of migration based on the effective balance between solidarity and responsibility. We want to act jointly in order to prevent illegal migrant flows and create humanitarian corridor from the vulnerable countries. We want to strengthen the legal migration, which is resource and not a threat for our society. In connection with this subject, there are the transit and origin countries issue. Italy supports in its political transition a peaceful recovery of Libya. In the conference that we have chaired with France and Germany recently, we have called upon the international community to focus on this objective by assessing that only a peaceful process in Libya can lead to the balance of the country. The European commitment in its missions, it's also heading towards this direction. We are also close to the 4th December's elections, which are an opportunity for the Libyan government and people and for a renewed peace. I want to invite all the political stakeholders to hold inclusive and free elections, and only by doing this, the Libyc institutions will be democratic and free to act. This will also mean retiring and withdrawing the troops of foreign combatants. Italy is also committed in Maghreb in order to foster a stronger cooperation among the countries across that area and create conditions favorable to development and stability. We are close to Tunisia, as we have proved through the vaccine campaign. We are certain that Tunis will overcome the current crisis and face its social and cultural challenges. They need to pave the way towards a new path that helps the government to make all the institutions functioning in a good way. Italy is also committed in the Sahel region, where we take part in different missions of NATO, UN, and European Union. We have welcomed the last government in Lebanon, which has to face many challenges. This is just the first step towards an exit from the crisis that they are living. We keep committing in this regard on the multilateral and bilateral frameworks, thanks to the UNIFIL mission. As far as Israel is concerned, we are positive towards his challenges with the Arab world. The Gaza crisis actually shows the need to restart with the international efforts and towards the peace process. We need to create two nations, two countries in a negotiated way between the two parties. In the Persian Gulf, after the polarization that we have seen over the last 2 years, we have invested on the opportunities offered by the Dubai Expo 2022. We have a constructive dialogue the with Tehran as far as the non-nuclear non-proliferation is concerned as well. We contribute to the gradual expansion of the NATO mission, of which we will be in charge from next May. The collaboration between the Mediterranean countries cannot be limited to multilateral relationships or crisis management. It needs to be developed towards a sustainable growth, which is also shared and long term. In order to further strengthen the social and economic connections that we have, and in order to face the challenges that we need to face, such as the climate change challenge that sees the rise of the temperature in the Mediterranean area being higher than the world average, which might result in catastrophic climate events such as fires, floods, and drought. The natural resources of the Mediterranean countries make us wish to create a shared energy policy, not only to promote the development of renewables from solar panels to other devices, but also green hydrogen. We need to capitalize on the gas resources which enrich the Mediterranean area as resources for the mean term. And we need to plan the next green development over the next years. For example, through the ports. Thanks to the Recovery and Resilience Plan, we are investing on logistics in order to make our ports more sustainable in terms of environment and in terms of energy consumptions. We are improving the digital services of the ports in order to make them more integrated within the general infrastructure of the nation. We want to improve the connections that we have through sea across the Mediterranean area in order to reduce bottlenecks and improve the economic exchanges and trades. This is a common challenge also for the Mediterranean Sea, which includes the youth. the younger generation. Italy is supporting the new agenda for the Mediterranean area and for the European Union. We need to foster an equal, fair, and sustainable recovery. First of all, the digital and environmental challenges and directions are those that lead us towards prosperity. This is why we need to have a shared vision as Mediterranean area, not as the southern border of Europe, but as a hub of economy and social issues. With this, I want to thank you and offer you a good day.
Grazie al Presidente del Consiglio e con la stessa gratitudine cordiale di cuore invito il Ministro degli Esteri a prendere la parola. Grazie.
Grazie Ambasciatore Massolo, grazie al Direttore Magri per l'Istituto per gli Studi Politici Internazionali. Benvenuti a questa 7ª edizione dei Rome Dialogues. Un grazie al Presidente del Consiglio per il suo intervento. Dopo l'edizione virtuale dello scorso anno, i Med Dialogues tornano parzialmente in presenza grazie anche allo sforzo straordinario della rete diplomatico-consolare. Rinnoviamo un appuntamento affermatosi come un hub di riflessione strategica sul Mediterraneo e che conferma Roma nel ruolo di crocevia
aspects, which confirm Rome as a hub. This edition of Med 2021 revolves around the concept of transition. As a matter of fact, we are living a moment of great change and great devastation. For example, the pandemic and the withdrawal of our troops from Afghanistan, which has highlighted many issues in international relations. The Mediterranean area represents, in this very moment, an area which is being affected by different transitions, geopolitical, security, and humanitarian, which confirms its strategic role at a global level. We need to make sure that these transitions can successfully completed. The main objectives is to support them so as to being able to generate more inclusive and fair societies where the fundamental rights of people are respected. Among the main transitions, the first one is geopolitical. The scope of regional challenges from terrorism to migratory flows has progressively extended by going beyond South and East and by also involving the Gulf, Western Africa, Sahel, the Horn of Africa. And today, Europe, Mediterranean area and Africa are intertwined and they have now become a sort of vertical macro continent. The challenges of this geopolitical space, as proven by the pandemic, involve each one of us, and therefore we need a cooperation-based approach also in terms of charges and responsibilities. After this introduction, I'd like to focus my attention on 3 transitions concerning the Mediterranean area: security transition, the twin transitions, and social transition. First, security-based transition. The stability of region appears to be in a limbo between evolution and involution. On one hand, we detect encouraging signal, for example, the defeat of Daesh in its territory, the standardization of relationship between Israel and some Arabian countries, and the restoration of constructive dialogues, including stakeholders from the Middle East and Gulf. On the other hand, some crises still persist. I'm thinking about the Syrian crisis in Yemen with the humanitarian cost, uncertainty, which is having a great impact on JCPOA, the restart of the dialogue in Vienna. I think about the need for a new negotiation to reach a long-lasting solution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think about delicate situation in Tunisia and Lebanon, different countries which remain crucial to ensure regional balance. I can think about the tension in the Eastern Mediterranean area, but also in Afghanistan, in which we are committed to keeping our effort to support the population to deal with the humanitarian crisis and risks faced by the country. Stability and security of the area remain priorities because it's fundamental to ensure economic development, protection of rights, and growth of democratic institutions. In this regard, the most urgent challenge is the stabilization of Libya. The Conference of Paris of 12th of November, as reiterated by Mr. Draghi, co-chaired by France, Germany, Italy, Libya, and United Nations, has reaffirmed the Libyan ownership and international support to ensure the stabilization in the framework of the Berlin trial and Berlin process and many aspects. Libyan stakeholders have to be committed to ensure fair, inclusive, and reliable voting process to ensure a fair process on the 24th of December. At the same time, it's crucial to ensure the withdrawal of our troops from the country. Our commitment is also strong when it comes to tackling cross-cutting threats, for example, terrorism, which is ready to flourish in the region. For example, we invested a lot in ensuring stabilization of institutions in Iraq, where we are going to lead the NATO mission next year, and the anti-Daesh ISIS coalition, of which I was chaired last June in Rome. At that time, we decided to promote the establishment of focus group on the terroristic threat in Africa, and altogether, yesterday, we inaugurated the first session. Under a perspective of ensuring Africa, Mediterranean area, and Europe a cross-cutting objective, Italy plays a crucial role, especially in the Sahel, by opening new embassies in Niger and Burkina Faso. As part of the alliance in the Sahel, we would like to promote sustainable development and the fight against radicalization by ensuring a qualified support in Cuba and the mission of United Nations Europe, as well as the MISI mission in Niger. When it comes to African terrorism, let me remind you once again the sacrifice of our ambassador Luca Davasio, a carabiniere Vittorio Caravacci, and their driver. In this regard, where conflict keep on existing, we would like to encourage the transition, shifting from a regional transition to a new paradigm, a new system based on a dialogue, availability to compromise, and mutual trust. This is about promoting regional safety, for example, in the Gulf and in the Eastern Mediterranean area. We are fully aware that this objective is not feasible in the short term. However, it's an objective that is important to ensure a transition that, as I said before, represents the foundation to ensure a peaceful future for all the Mediterranean countries. In this regard, the second transition on which I'd like to focus my attention, which is also important, the green transition. The need for taking up all the challenges is proven by the regional projections concerning the 3.8 economic contraction induced by the pandemic in 2020. The World Bank estimates an average growth of GDP in the region of 2.8% in 2021 and 4.2% in 2022, with great fluctuations between countries. MENA countries are economic partners crucial for Italy, with an interchange which stands at a higher value than 50 billion euros. In the first 8 months of 2021, trades keep on increasing by recording a 36.5% increase compared to the same period in 2020. In this context, green transition represents a priority for our relations and for the overall development of the region. The Mediterranean area is one of the most vulnerable areas to climate change, with a temperature increasing by 20% faster compared to the global average, and a reduction in summer rainfall, which may touch 40%. It would be then fundamental to pursue a transition process where renewable energies are prioritized in the regional energy transitions, in light of the role of the gas as a transition source in the short term. The discovery of these new sources represent the real opportunities to ensure common growth. Italy's vision is based on the inclusive value of energy and on the pursuit of research solutions which ensure fair access to these resources by becoming the first milestone of a broader cooperation in the Mediterranean area. At the same time, it's crucial to invest on digital transition. By developing technologies, digital skills, we will be able to fix youth unemployment, which in 2020 recorded in many countries one of the highest rate in the world. The emphasis of Italy on the small and medium enterprises in multilateral and bilateral diplomacy tries to achieve this goal. With the G20 Innovation League following the G20 in Sorrento, we gathered together startups and big companies all together. The Youth Forum of MED, which I led yesterday, fostered the discussion between youth of southern countries and European countries on green transition. We cannot forget the potentials of blue economy. Mare Nostrum corresponds to 1% of the global ocean surface, but it includes 27% of maritime trade on an international level. The problem of the pandemic on trade will favor maritime trade, for which Mediterranean area already plays a European leadership. Intermodality, decarbonization of poverty infrastructures, management of maritime resources, protection of biodiversity are just some of the areas on which we need to work to have a cooperation-based agenda. The development of value chain, regional commercial relations will have to go hand in hand with the system of trade and the World Trade Organization, which has been chaired by Italy in 2020. In the framework of the new agenda of 2020 for the Mediterranean, the economic and investment plan for the neighboring countries in the south, which is worth 7 billion euros, provides new horizon opportunities for economic cooperation in light of digital green transitions and reports a new geopolitical approach by the European Union in the region. As said by the ministries in Barcelona a few days ago, we want to work with partner countries to better build the infrastructures after the pandemic and after the Glasgow Pact. It is therefore crucial to make our region more resilient and inclusive. Social transition is therefore the third pillar for the regional cooperation and European cooperation. First, this happens in regard to assistance to communities that the most vulnerable categories, if we consider that the impact of the pandemic threatens and the increase from 176 to 192 million euros of people living in extreme poverty. Italy has relentlessly encouraged solidarity and international cooperation in the fight against the pandemic. Filling vaccine gap with vulnerable countries is crucial to reach 40% of global population vaccinated by the end of 2021 and 70% by the half of 2022. As we said during the Rome Declaration of 2020, thanks to the COVID facility, African countries benefited from 226 million vaccines and MENA countries more than 75 million vaccines. Italy contributed to COVAX facility with 125 million euros and has donated more than 45 million doses of vaccines to low, medium income countries with great attention for the Mediterranean area and Middle East, Africa, Horn of Africa and Sahel. As for bilateral channels, we donated approximately 2 million doses to many countries. This is not enough. We need to work harder as an international community. Italian cooperation is bringing forward activities to protect human rights, to manage water resources, and a better use of life condition of most vulnerable people, along with the protection of world heritage. In 2020-2021, we provided many countries resources which are worth more than 220 million euros. It's important in this regard to not to forget migration. The approach of Italy aims at reaching a management of flows which tries and combat irregular flows along with irregular and traffickers, always inspired by dialogue and cooperation, a strategy which aims at having a shared responsibility within the European Union and with the destination countries, even through the attention to migratory cooperation. It's crucial to intensify dialogue between Europe, North of Africa, and Sahel. A dialogue on today's flow, starting from the specific agreements and the opportunity for a circular approach which may contribute to the development of origin countries. In conclusion, the development dynamics that I traced, safety-based, green, social ones, are intertwined, and they have to be considered synergically with a positive agenda which matches dialogue and cooperation while managing Mediterranean common assets, from health to environment, from energy to technological innovation, from research to infrastructure, from water to cultural heritage. These processes, these transformation processes confirm once again the strategic role of the Mediterranean area, which goes beyond its shores, challenges and opportunities on to which our prosperity depend. Italy is well aware of it, and this is why we're working to keep this area at the center of the international agenda to further strengthen relations between the region and Europe, so as to achieve a structural partnership and a fair partnership. In conclusion, allow me to express another thought on the Mediterranean area by quoting the words spoken by Pope Francis, and we will shortly read you a message. The Mediterranean, as defined by the Pope, remains an historical, geographical, and human bridge between Europe, Africa, and Asia. In these words, we find the cultural vision that Italy has of the Mediterranean area. Mare Nostrum considered as a proximity space, as a hub of civilization and common fate. Thank you for your attention.
We kindly invite you on the stage, Monsignor Miroslav
Vorrei invitare
Secretary for the Holy See's Relations with States, to read a message from His Holiness Pope Francis.
Illustri signore e signori.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my greetings to those of you who are participating in the 7th Rome-Med Dialogues Conference, which is promoted every year by the Italian Ministry for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, and the Institute for International Policy Studies, with the aim of rethinking the traditional approach to the Mediterranean area and seeking new shared answers to the important challenges this latter poses. Although the kingdoms and empires of the Mediterranean area are now a thing of the past, the Mare Nostrum continues to play a central geopolitical role, even in the current century. The Mediterranean is the frontier and thus the meeting place of 3 continents, which are not only washed by it, but also touch each other within it, and are thus called upon to exist. The interconnection is a concrete testament, not only on from a symbolic perspective, the fact that the whole planet is one big home and that the fate of one country cannot be independent of that of the others. Moreover, the very concept of independence has been dangerously changing. While in the past, being independent meant first and foremost having a legitimate claim to autonomy in relation to interference or occupation by foreign states, the word independence is now increasingly being used as a synonym for indifference or disregard in the fate of other peoples. Politicians and diplomats are to do everything they can to prevent the globalization process from degenerating into the globalization of indifference. This commitment must be felt even more strongly today, since we have increasingly clear evidence, from the climate crisis to the pandemic, that not only states, but even continents cannot keep on ignoring each other. While this is true in general, it is even more so in the Mediterranean area. All the resources and all the potential of this sea require a new approach, one that is not self-centered and selfish, but shared by the countries bordering on the Mediterranean and by those that do not border on it, but are affected by Mediterranean policies in various capacities. So an approach that should be capable of easing the multiple regional conflicts that arise on the surface, on the seabed and on the edges of the sea, and that extend from the sea to the continent, among the different problems affecting the Mediterranean, and thus requiring a far-sighted political vision. The one of migration emerges as extremely urgent. This issue has always been very dear to me, so much as to led me to choose the island of Lampedusa for my first apostolic journey in 2013. The events of recent years increasingly confirm that an effective response can only come from a joint effort that is not limited to border countries, but also shared by respective continents to which said countries belong. No one should be left behind to deal with this great problem. Everyone should feel responsible, because everyone is in fact responsible. As the question God asks Cain at the beginning of the Bible reminds us, where is your brother? Migration once again demonstrates that everything is connected and shows us that a stable solution requires an approach that takes into account the many aspects connected with it, as may be highlighted by discussions hosted by this conference. I would also like to point out that the Mediterranean area is also the focus of the Church's constant attention. During the very days of your conference, I will be traveling to Cyprus and Greece. I would also like to recall last year's fruitful meeting held in Bari, entitled Mediterranean Frontier of Peace, which was promoted by the Italian Bishops' Conference and which was attended by the bishops of more than 20 countries bordering the Mare Nostrum. Said event will be followed by another event in Florence, which is currently being organized. I hope that not only these meetings, but also your discussions on the Mediterranean area will be inspired by the Mediterranean talks inaugurated by Giorgio La Pira between the 50s and the 60s, which brought the opposite shores of the sea very close together, thereby inaugurating a political dialogue around what La Pira believed to be a great lake of Galilee. In this spirit, I would like to wish the proceeding of every success, pledge my prayers, and invoke God's blessing. Signed by Pope Francis, from Vatican City, 20 November 2021.